Okay.
Okay, a lot of people I see are frozen, but we are recording. Okay, Marva was there, now she's gone. Okay, this is a group Erace that was formed in the summer of 1993. We seek ways through person-to-person communication. Um, with love and respect, join us. Something to that effect. Okay, and I don't have my sheet, but okay, I know we go around and we go over the rules, okay, which is one finger to get on the list, two fingers for a clarifying question. Move your hand around so that we can see you. You please keep your comments to 2 minutes. Be respectful, no personal attacks, no name calling. Um, we will at 15 minutes before 11:15, basically. We'll do a wrap up. At that point, you express your final thoughts, and we have 1 minute. What else? I think that's it.
Keep yourself
I don't have
muted
my
through.
little sheet.
Keep yourself muted
Yeah.
throughout. And yeah, what, Becky?
That's a big rule.
It is a big rule.
To keep yourself muted. Okay. I don't know. I think Glenn left us. Um, what's the next thing? Oh, we're going to go around and we're going to introduce ourselves. So we start with Bill Ives.
I am Bill Ives, and I've been coming to Erace for maybe 4 years now. And I always learn something every time. And I'm very committed to continuing these conversations. So look forward to today's. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Marion?
Hi, everybody. Again, I'm Marion Lagarde in New Orleans, and I've been attending the Erase discussion since June of 1993. Always interesting, stimulating conversations. I look forward to the Saturday discussions.
Okay, thank you, Marion. Marva?
Good morning. My name is Marva. I've been attending Erase post Katrina. I was invited by my brother Glenn, and I always find Saturday morning discussion stimulating. I learn something new every discussion, and the topics are interesting and much needed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marva. Lynn?
Good morning. I'm Lynn Frank here in New Orleans, although my background is Paris on my screen. So nice to be back with you. I gave a tour last Saturday at this time, but it's my first in 15 years and maybe the last for another
It went
year
to
or so.
jump.
Anyway, I'm happy to count all of you as my friends, and it's a very welcome experience every Saturday morning.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Phyllis?
Hi, everybody. I'm Phyllis. I have been coming to Erase since I moved to New Orleans in 2008, and I'm currently on the board.
What is? Ah, can I ask everybody to make sure you are muted unless you are speaking, because there's some serious noise going on. Becky, introduce yourself.
Good morning. Yes, I'm very glad to be here. And I want to thank you for gathering this group and keeping it going for so long. I have visited New Orleans in the winter, and I'm here because of Cindy and Bill Ives, but I'm from near Boston. So good morning.
Thank you. Pedro?
Yes, good morning. I'm here in Austin, Texas. Been coming to these meetings since the summertime and enjoying them very much. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Pedro. Marla?
Hey, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good morning. My name's Marla Burke. I am in New Orleans, Metairie specifically. I've been coming to Erace for the last several months or so. And I'm really happy to be here because I've been away the last few weeks, and it is because I have a very busy teenage girl who has all these events in the morning on Saturdays. So happy to be back.
Thank you. Cindy? You have to unmute.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry to be a bit late getting on, but it's the computer's fault, not mine. Or maybe I don't know what I'm doing anymore. That's also possible. I've been coming to Erace about 4 years, find it very helpful. I knew about it a good 10 or 15 years before I never got here. Saturdays are hard for teachers then, although retired, but I think I'm busier than I ever was. So I don't know quite how that happens, but it does. Thanks for tolerating my being pokey.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Louise?
Hey, yeah, I apologize for being a bit late on as well. No excuse. So, been coming for over 20 years in New Orleans, and then when we moved here after Katrina, just rejoined recently. Very happy to be here.
Thank you, Louise. Cheryl?
Good morning. I actually got myself together pretty well. I have my breakfast sitting here and my computer just completely crashed. So excuse me for you all froze when someone said hello to me. So I really enjoy these. I think everybody knows that I got to join you before Katrina. And then at the first of the year, I got an invite and I'm happy to be back and be able to be in such great discussions with you all.
Thank you, Cheryl. Richard?
So, I guess like some of you, I'm having trouble with computer this morning. My video is not working, but my name is Richard, and I'm a longtime facilitator and participant in Eracism since its beginning in 1993. Hi, everybody.
Hi. Okay. Amal is connecting to audio. So let me enter. Amal, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
She said yes.
Amal?
I'm here.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm Amal. Been coming to Erace meetings for a little over 20 years now, so.
Okay, well, thank you. Glenn?
You got that noise in the background, so I'm gonna cut it off right now.
Okay, all right, well, that's Glenn. Okay, I'm Nancy. I've been coming to Erace since 2007. And I'm part of the board as well. I brought this article because last week we talked about the Derek Chauvin verdict. And it was as emotional as the Derek Chauvin verdict was, in the subsequent after the last 2 weeks, there have been several more shootings. And it's starting to get to me. All right. Before I thought I was, as relieved as I was, and I can't speak for the entire African American community, but the sigh of relief that someone was finally convicted of it, the subsequent shootings, it's like, what was the point? They're still shooting. The topic that I was going to bring was, I looked up, it made me start to think, am I next? You can't help but think, am I next? Am I going to get stopped by the police and have a police stop go wrong? And because I had a very scary, about 10 years ago, I got stopped by the police, and I had some PTSD after that stop. And now if I see a police car, I do everything that I can to get away from them, because I don't want to be stopped. And so now I can't help but think, am I next? So I Googled, am I next? You know, I was looking for an article about mental health in the African American community, in regards to the continued police shootings. And what I found was not so much that I find an article. I found all this merchandise that says, am I next? There are t-shirts, there are sweatshirts, there are hoodies, there are all kinds of stuff that says, am I next? Which was even, I don't know, in a way, I'm obviously not the first person to think, am I next? Obviously, not with all this merchandise out there that says, am I next? So anyway, I was kind of deliberating about that, and I was discussing it kind of with my coworkers and whatnot, and we got on the subject as we were discussing this about people who don't think that this is a serious issue for the African American community. All right, the mental health of the African American community in light of all of these shootings, which led me to this article. Are the most harmful racists are the ones who think that they're not racist at all, that there is not a problem. The problem can be fixed amongst the If you would just comply. Oh yeah. I think we were also listening to WWL about just comply, just comply. If you just comply, if you're stopped. Well, this man, Andrew Brown, was sitting in his driveway with his hands on a steering wheel and somehow got shot in the head. I mean, they shot 4 shots into his arm. The 5th one hit him in the back of the head. What are you supposed to do? And you still hear comply, comply, comply. And so that's what led me to this article, that the most harmful racists are the ones that think they're not racist at all, that there is no problem in the African American community as it relates to anything. If you would just comply, if you would just educate yourself, if you would just stop involving yourself in the drug trade, if you would just stop, if you would just do the right thing. That's what brought me to this article, and that's why I brought it. So that being said, the list is open. And I don't know if I'm frozen because nobody is moving. Okay, Rebecca, you have your hand up, your finger up. I can see you. Marion, is your finger up?
Oh. Do you want me to go ahead?
Go ahead, Becky. I just have to look up.
Okay, well, good
Screens
morning.
are frozen.
So there is a group of people, because I was one of them, and maybe I couldn't be now, who really had no idea about racism. I was brought up in a white community, and I never saw a person of color, probably until I was 14. And even then, I guess you could call me racist. I never wanted to do harm to anybody, nor did I want anybody lynched or shot or denied employment or denied housing. That would have horrified me, but I didn't know that people were in that situation. But I can't believe there's very many people now who don't know that racism exists the way I didn't know at that particular time. And I made an effort to volunteer where I would be, once I knew there were people of color and a lot of different people in the world, I made an effort to put myself in situations where I'd see them and meet them and work with them on one thing or another. And I think the military, I don't know what you all think about this, but the military was a wonderful thing where people were mixed up and did get to know each other and work with each other. I know both my stepbrother and my brother-in-law really learned a great deal by being in wars with people of color. And so I think there may be a lot, I don't know today if it's really possible to be that ignorant because there's so much publicity, but there could be people who are ignorant as well as people who say they're not racist. It's just a lie. It's a lie like so many people tell. They're just lying so that when they do something violent, they won't be accused of a hate crime. That's it.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you very much. I have Bill. Is anyone else next? Some people, your screens are frozen and I can't, if you're putting your hand up, I can't see you. I don't know how. Unfreeze it.
Marion had her finger up before me.
Who?
Marion.
Marion? Okay, Marion.
And then I can go after her.
Oh, okay. I thought it was Bill. As long as there's this pervasive underlying attitude on the part of some people who believe that they're not racist, that I'm not racist, but the majority of Black men, or what I shouldn't say that, most Black men do engage in illegal acts. They commit criminal acts, and just as I said, they preface their remarks by saying they're not racist. Right after the Chauvin verdict was meted out, there were several online comments. I forget what channel it was, and the woman started, one of the women that commented started castigating George Floyd. And I said, well, the man is dead and in his grave. But she said, I'm not racist, but George Floyd did engage in illegal acts. And I know his family misses him, and it's a shame he died, but he did commit criminal acts. So he really brought some of this down on his own head. But she started saying, just before she made the comments about George Floyd was responsible for his death, that she wasn't racist. So yeah, the man did engage in illegal acts. Well, he's dead now and he's gone. But I interpreted it as some kind of justification that Chauvin wasn't that wrong in putting his knee on the man's neck.
Okay. Thank you, Marion. We have Bill and then Phyllis. Anyone else? Okay.
Glenn has his hand up.
Glenn, okay, I'm glad. Thank you. If you see somebody and I don't call their name, please bring it to my attention because my screen it says my internet's unstable. I've never had that happen before. Okay.
So
Thank you,
we
Bill.
see so many examples of people who are ardent racists get apoplectic over being called a racist. And I remember Mark Meadows, the congressman from South Carolina, during congressional hearings, someone referred to his activities as being racist. And he went ballistic. And he said, well, Sam Clyburn is one of my good friends, that line. And then and he asked for those remarks to be struck from the record. And there was later a lot of videos of him talking about Obama in very racist terms. But I wanted to add two more things quickly. I remember, and this was about anti-Semitism rather than racism against African Americans, but there's a scene in Chariots of Fire where the Jewish student is talking to his Gentile roommate about the look. And he said, people appear to be not anti-Semitic, but they always use that look of disapproval and the silent disapproval. And that reminded me a lot of what's happening here. And the final thing I add is Nancy said the Chauvin verdict hasn't stopped the shootings. They're almost accelerating. And we had a friend, we were talking about this, a white woman our age who 20 years ago was living in the Bay Area, and she had a black boyfriend, and he somehow got hold of video conversations between the police about how they wanted to kill and he used the N-word. And they started to protest that, and someone threw a bomb into their house, their apartment. Fortunately, no one was hurt. Anyway, I heard the bell go off, so I'll.
You want to get back on the list?
Well, I'd like to hear a few other people, and then I have one other thing to say, so I'll get back.
Okay. Okay. Next we have Phyllis and then Glenn. Anyone else? Okay, Glenn.
Phyllis.
I'm sorry.
Louise has a finger up.
And Louise. Okay, thank you.
So first, to reply to what Becky said, I'm not sure what wars her relatives fought in, but my understanding is in World War II, the U.S. military units were segregated. And when Black veterans came back to the United States, they didn't get any respect from white racists because of their just because of their service. They were back to just being, an American black guy who gets treated like crap. I think it's important to remember that even if somebody killed by the police has a criminal record, the police are not there to execute people for past criminal behavior. That is not their role. And that is too often what they do. Third, I think there's a lot of willful ignorance. I see you, Glenn. There's a lot of willful ignorance in the country, especially from people of a certain political following and the people who believe conspiracy theories. They contort themselves into a lot of things. Some of them are in this article, and even more to just, continue to uphold white supremacist ideals and ideologies. And even if they're not in our circles, they're out there. Glenn had a clarifying question. Becky once on the list. Nancy?
Who else is on the list?
Becky once on the list. Becky.
Okay, because the screen is bad. Okay, yeah, Becky. Okay, Glenn.
He has a clarifying question.
That perception that you give of the military, is that the perception?
Go ahead, Glenn.
He's asking me a clarifying question.
That perception that you gave of the military.
Okay, go ahead.
Wow.
She's having difficulties. Go ahead.
That perception that you have of the military, is that the way the military is today?
No. Not to my understanding.
No, but that's what started the civil rights movement.
No, he's asking me.
The soldiers coming back.
Nancy, he's asking me.
I know, but he's asking, is that the way it is? But I'm clarifying that that's what started it.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Okay, my turn now.
Yes, it is.
Are me and you co-anchoring this talk together or what?
Who, me and you?
Yeah.
I'm the facilitator. I'm co-anchoring everything.
All right.
Go ahead.
I don't feel that in my psyche that I'm next. Especially in the city of New Orleans, because that's not happening in the city of New Orleans with the police. And I don't want to get to be an anti-policeman because they are much more helpful than they are harmful. Our community calls on the police a lot for protection, and they need that protection. If we get to the point where we don't want policemen to come into our neighborhood, then we will be in trouble. Now, what needs to change is how they are trained, and what they need to change is not stopping people for brake lights and all these other things. Give that to somebody else to do. And stop using it as a pretext to search the.
Glenn froze.
I know this, and it's terrible.
It's not
I
just
don't know.
you. It's not just you this time. It's
Yeah.
Glenn. It's Glenn. Marva, you can't ask him a clarifying question if he's frozen.
I don't know if you can hear me. We could all go off and come back again and see what happens. But if
I don't know with that.
That was exactly what I was going to suggest, actually.
Well, how would that help Nancy having weak internet?
And unstable.
Better
And
connection.
Glenn is out in his car roaming the city and probably running into dead zones.
Okay, we have Louise, you're next. Louise, there you go.
So back to what you were saying, Nancy, about the killings are still happening, the shootings are still happening. In fact, literally, I think it was yesterday I read about a Latino guy, Mario Alvarez. I'm not sure if that's his correct name. Anywho, he died from them kneeling on him, which is, familiar to a case, I think, that we are aware of. And and this goes back to the mental health issues. Within 2 seconds of watching that video, I was aware that the guy had mental issues. He was not doing anything. He was there with some bottles of liquor, and someone was complaining that he was drinking in this area of green, park area. That was it. That was his crime. And it escalated horribly. He was resisting, yeah, for sure, but he did not violently, and he just didn't know what was going on. He, by his words and by the way he was, he had no idea what was going on and was not being violent. So in my mind, if police come to a situation like that, within a few seconds, they should be able to realize that there is another issue here, and they need to call for backup for mental health workers that would be able to come in and de-escalate and work out the problem, instead of this guy lying on his belly dead within 20 minutes. It's I know it's going off a little bit from that, but also back to like the racist thing. Yes, there are so many people who don't realize they are, and they're the ones that don't realize that white supremacy is a thing, that white privilege is a thing. They just won't admit that, they don't see it, and they are racist. The end.
Thank you, Louise. I have, Becky is next. Does anyone else want to be on the list? If you would, please put it in the chat because I can see the chat, but the screen freezes up and I can't see, you know, if you put your faces are, for the majority of you, your faces are frozen until you start talking.
Well, why can't they speak up and say I want to be on the list?
Because it interrupts people.
Okay, I have Bill and then Amal. I have Becky, Bill, and Amal. Anyone else? Okay, I'm gonna look in the chat. Becky, please go ahead.
Cheryl raised her hand too.
Okay, Cheryl, thank you.
Okay, I was going to say that I would like to think of things that help this situation. I do think that many people know they're racist and they're lying when they say they're not. But some people haven't had any experience to actually understand even a little bit about racism. And I wanted to say that the two military places where Korea was one of them, where they were integrated, and my brother-in-law was a medic in the Second World War, and the medics were integrated, interestingly enough. And it changed his life, honestly. So I'm just thinking that any little bit of integration really helps to just get to know a variety of people. It really makes a huge difference. And I think I like the idea that college could be better integrated, or you know, not the colleges, but wherever the job training occurs, if those things could be, I mean, that's wishful thinking, I realize, but I think it would make a huge difference. And we should be supporting the bill that is in Congress now. They are thinking of a bill that at least is going to curb some of the police act misdeeds, horrible deeds. I can understand that you're scared. It's terrifying. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Becky. Next we have Bill.
I wanted to support one thing that Glenn said. Yeah. I wanted to support one thing that Glenn said. From my experience, as a white person, it seems like the police in New Orleans are better than a lot of other cities. And some of the worst offenders are cities in the north in supposedly liberal states. The Oakland police, the Seattle police, the Minneapolis police. The Minneapolis police, the Justice Department is now doing an investigation of whether they engage in racist practices. But the main thing I wanted to say, I was struck by something that was in the article last week. Jonathan Kozol, who was an education reformer in Boston, and I didn't know him personally, but I knew of his work quite well. He said, and I'm reading now from the article, I quote, that white people will probably go on leading our normal lives, will go on participating in our nation in a normal way, unless there comes a time when Black people can compel us by methods of extraordinary pressure to interrupt our pleasure. And that comment about interrupting our pleasure, because unlike Nancy, I'm not necessarily afraid of a police stop. But if I was Black, I would be terrified. And I get that. So we need to step outside of our pleasure. And I was recently getting, I'm getting involved in two neighborhood issues that have some impact on African Americans as well as others. And I was saying, because I'm getting old and tired, I was saying, oh, what did I do? Why did what am I thinking? Why did I get involved? And then I remembered Kozol's comment about the need to step out of our pleasure. And that motivated me to continue to work on those activities. So as whites, we need to step out of our pleasure and engage in these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Next, I have Amal, Cheryl, Harvey, and Phyllis. Anybody else? Okay, Amal.
Yes. Oh, wow. Great article. This is one of the best I've seen in a while. Was one of the interesting things about the article is the author of the article did a comparison where he called, on one hand he said you have a dog whistle, and then on the other hand he says you have a bullhorn. And the dog whistle is the people who are racist but don't realize it or think it, and they're not blatant about it, in other words. And then you have the bullhorn where the racism is obvious and it's in your face. The problem is the people who are the dog whistle feel like they're not racist because they're not the bullhorn. And that's where the problem is coming in at. If you're not blatant and in a person's face about it, you don't feel like you're a racist because your racism is somewhat subtle, not that obvious. So you're the dog whistle. So that's the problem. The dog whistle feels like they're not racist because their racism doesn't manifest itself in the manner that the bullhorn does. So if you can find the problem is, a lot of white people who are the dog whistle don't want to be told that they're racist because they feel like, well, I'm liberal, and some of my best friends are black, and I go to work with black people every day, and and so it gets into that conversation. And so as long as you have that, a dog whistle that feels like they're not a racist or can be told that they are, that's where the problem will continue on and persist, because the bullhorn is too obvious, so they can't deny their racism. But the dog whistle, since they're not that obvious, they can hide it under coded language and coded words, and I'm liberal and I voted for Obama. It's things like that. So we have to be very careful when we're dealing with that, and make the dog whistle realize their racism, as subtle as it may be.
Thank you, Amal. Okay, next we have Cheryl.
Was that controversial enough? I might need to get more controversial. I don't think that was.
You need to get more controversial.
I had a clarifying question.
Okay, Lynn.
Amal, in the book White Fragility, the author, D'Angelo, says we ought to get rid of this word racism and racist. People hate it so much that they close their minds to
Marla,
activity that might be racist. Do you think if we could have another word and not be labeling people, that we might make more progress?
Absolutely not. I believe in calling a spade, and me trying to use language that's going to put you in a certain comfort zone is not going to help the situation. I need to call it what it is. And because next, what's the other thing that a person is not going to want to be called, to where we have to change the language to suit that person's comfort zone? What we gonna stop calling murderers then and give them another word to be called? No, we have to call it what it is, and that person has to be willing and wanting to change. And if that person is not willing and wanting to change, then they're going to continue with their behavior. It's just that simple.
Thank you. Phyllis has a clarifying question.
I changed my mind.
You changed your mind? Okay. Well, then next we have Cheryl.
Back to that dog whistle. Only certain people can hear a dog, like dog whistles, dogs hear it, but everybody else doesn't hear it. So that's a really interesting. A bullhorn is so loud that you can hear it inside your house everywhere. And I think that, this has to do with microaggressions, where I can go in a restaurant with friends and be treated entirely differently. And I've had to ask about why that was happening. It had to do with microaggressions. I don't think that you get to choose whether you're a racist. I can say I'm an anti-racist. That means I'm working. Doesn't mean that I've accomplished anything. I can still be a racist and work as an anti-racist, because since I was brought up in this system, there's going to be a bunch of flaws that I have. People think that people like to think they're not racist. I think that whether they just don't know, they don't want to change. That's what I think. Example, I live in a society where I live better than other people, and I allow that to happen. So something's wrong with me. In Oakland, I went to Oakland with my girlfriend. I got called a racist by her. She's a white chick too. And we were getting out of the car and some kids were playing like Ludi on the street, playing dice or something. And I was like, we're gonna walk through them. And I'm like, hey, hi, how are you? I'm from New Orleans. We say hi to everybody, right? Then we got to the store at the exact same time as another couple of women. And I let them go in before me. And my girlfriend, after I got home, she said, you know what? New Orleans is getting to you. You're such a racist now. I'm like, please tell me what you saw and why you're calling me a racist. She said, because you were like so polite. You made sure that you talked to those kids on the street. I said, yeah, I wasn't going to disregard them and pretend like they weren't there. I was walking through their game. Then she said, you veered off and let these other women walk through the store before us, and they were black. And you did that because you're white, didn't you? And I said, yeah, because when I go to the grocery store and it's a run for the line, I look around because I think, and this is maybe some weird thing about me, but I think people have been treated like shit for long enough. And if I can step back and let somebody else be ahead of me in a line for once, when typically by everybody else, they're not treated that way. I see it all the time. So I just think that was interesting. I disagree about the police stuff. This is my new book, Marianne Cobb. I am doing some work. I got to do a Zoom with her. She is amazing. I can't even go on and on about it, but it's not, it's like that whole defund the police, stop having the police.
Cheryl, would you like to get back on the list? Okay, I'll put you back on the list, all right? We have Harvey, Phyllis, Marla, and then Cheryl again. Does anyone else want to be on the list? Okay, Harvey.
Okay, Nancy, I'm Richard for this discussion. That's just wanted to clarify that's my middle name, and I'm using my middle name for these discussions. But at any rate, the woman that just spoke before me, was it what was her name? Because I just wanted to respond to her. I missed her name. Is it
Cheryl?
My name is Cheryl, and you can ask me a clarifying question.
Okay, no, well,
respond to me, right?
This is, I can do that too, but I mean, it's not a clarifying question, but I just wanted to, what you mentioned, because as you heard me say before, it's the personal experiences that we all have that I think really help to define this discussion. And the comments that were made to you about you being a racist for acting like a New Orleanian, I think makes the point as much as anything else about how we really misunderstand each other in terms of our personal experiences and our personal actions. You know, it sounds like you are, you don't think of yourself as a racist, but this other person did, because you were being a New Orleanian. You were acting polite. You were saying, how are you doing? And it was somehow being looked at as some kind of implicit bias or microaggression by the person who told you that. And I think this is exactly what the issue is with this, why I disagree with virtually everything in this article, because I think a lot of this is exactly what happened to you. A fellow is turned down or it's reported because it didn't appear that he belonged in an apartment building. If we think about human beings acting inappropriately towards other human beings, instead of, quote, white people acting inappropriately towards, quote, black people, which, as you've heard me say many times, I think these two, whiteness and blackness, totally obscures what's going on in many of these cases. We have inappropriate behavior occurring between human beings. Put me back on the list, please.
Okay, Richard. We have Phyllis, Marla, and Cheryl. Anyone else? Okay,
Bill,
Phyllis.
Bill wants to be on the
Bill?
list.
Okay.
So I want to say, and I hope this isn't like,
Amal's on that wants to be on. Excuse
oh,
me, Phyllis.
thank you. Thank you.
Amal, okay.
I just want to say, I hope this isn't shocking to any white person on this call, but we're all racists. And that's because of the entire culture that we've been steeped in our entire lives. And it's not our fault, but we have to do the anti-racist work to undo that.
Okay,
And we're
Richard.
never going to be done with that work. We are never going to be done. We will die still with some racist cells in us, and we just have to hope that we have enough time to do enough work to affect some change among other white people to help them with their awareness, because none of us have escaped the indoctrination of our society. And I like what you said, Cheryl. I used to live in the Bay Area, and I think a lot about how I wouldn't fit in anymore because I would do those same things that you described, and other things, and that people there would not know how to take it. They would not, like, I'm completely comfortable with men opening doors for me now, but in the Bay Area, it was like, oh no, you don't have to do that. I'm a feminist. But now here it's like, you better let a man open a door for you or let you out of the elevator first. Richard had a clarifying question.
Yes, in respect to your statement that we are all racist, could you please clarify what you mean by racist?
I mean, we all have the implications, the inclinations.
Richard?
I'm to do exactly what is in this article. We all do those things. We all think of bad neighborhoods. We say bad neighborhoods, we think bad neighborhoods, we think scary neighborhoods, and we mean places where predominantly Black people live. We pop a car door when a Black man walks behind our car or near our car. We do all those things. Those are racist activities, and they come from racist beliefs and thoughts. And we might not want to have them, but nobody in this culture walks around completely free of those. They pop up. You might not want them to. You might strive to overcome them, but they're still there. And any white person who would say to me they're not a racist, I would have to sit down and have a long talk with them, because I would be in complete disagreement with that statement. A white person raised in the US and most parts of Europe, I'd probably say too.
South Africa as well.
Okay, my screen is freezing up. So I think Phyllis, you're done? Yeah. And next we have Marla.
Yeah, just to follow
I
on what
have
Phyllis
a
said.
clarifying question.
Oh, yeah, Glenn has a clarifying
Okay, Glenn, you have a clarifying question. If we could see your face and you could put your fingers up, I would know that.
I saw his fingers.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Glenn.
You know, I met a white person. I met a white person that was raised by Black people. Are they racist too because they're in the culture?
I haven't met that person. I would have to meet that person and talk to them, and I'll let you know. Introduce me.
Okay.
Nancy, can you hear us? It looked like Cynthia had 2 fingers up. Cynthia, did you have 2 fingers up? No. And then Pedro says on the chat.
No.
Pedro on
No, I have Pedro.
Okay, excuse me.
I have Pedro. Okay. All right. This is who: Cheryl, Richard, Bill, Amal, Pedro. Anyone else?
I think Marla was about to talk before Glenn's clarifying question. You called on her.
I think Nancy might be frozen, at least she is for me.
Okay, Marla.
Okay.
There she goes. Okay.
Okay. I just wanted to follow with what Phyllis said. One of, I think, the greatest dangers for white people is not waking up every day and thinking about how our actions, however big or small, are harmful to people of color. And again, it doesn't make me not a racist, but hopefully it speaks to trying to do anti-racist work within myself. And I also wanted to kind of speak to how just me with my individual relationships with some other white people I've been friends with for decades has become quite broken over the last 6 months to a year, specifically because they don't want to be called out. You know, it's what Amal spoke to about being very uncomfortable in looking very deeply within themselves, or sometimes not even very deeply at all. But it takes a lot of discomfort, sitting in the discomfort and being ready to accept what somebody of color may tell you, or maybe somebody who is white who is telling you, this may be a racist tendency that you have, or your comment sounds racist, or it is racist. Other white people don't want other white people to tell them that they are something, and they immediately think that that person feels they are better than for calling them out. And that's something that I personally have had a struggle with over the last year or so. Like I said, with several relationships. So if I'm called out, I try very much to make my response not defensive, and I want to respond more with curiosity than defense. And I think thinking of it as engagement and curiosity and, tell me more. I want to hear more. I'd like to learn more. And I'm being receptive to what is being told to me, or how I'm being quote unquote called out, makes a big difference. And I still don't know how to get some other white folks to understand that or approach it that way. I think if you approach things with a curiosity, there is a tendency to be, more receptive to possible change than if you respond in a defensive way. So that's all.
Thank you, Marla. Okay, next we have Cheryl.
I really appreciate what Marla just said. This morning I had a friend over. We stayed up too late, so she spent the night over, and we were talking, and I said, "Of course you're a racist." I said, "So am I. We just don't see how we participate." I like this friend because we get to talk openly and honestly about things. But I find that pointing out that I can't see my own racism, is helpful to other people that are white. Back to Oakland, that area of Oakland that I go to is by the airport. Those people around that airport, they live like shit, and they're mostly Black. And so, Oakland's got a shitload of problems, even though it's a major Black city, and I'm afraid of the cops in Oakland. I'm not so afraid of the cops in New Orleans, although I know not to call them. And if I do, I know who to call. And one of those people would be a Black police officer that is like a cousin through relationships to me. And she puts out on Facebook when she can feel the tension that she hopes nobody has a mental breakdown that day because she doesn't want to have to deal with it. And she would love if we followed some of the advice that's out there, and it's about being an abolitionist to the way the incarceration system works. And, I was taught a long time ago because of my dating habits and my marriage habits that I don't call the police. And I realized that I participated in the racist system. Like that really was one of the places where I really learned something deep about myself, is instead of changing the police, I went along with the program. and learn that you don't call the police to your home, because the police will do bad things. And, you know, it would be so great if my whole neighborhood, I've been thinking about doing this, printing up a bunch of resources and just passing it out to my neighbors to say, like, if we have a problem and it's this, we need to call these people. If we have a problem and it's this, we need to call those people, so that we can start doing this work ourselves instead of calling the police so that things can escalate. Call people that couldn't escalate this, you know, that de-escalate the situations. All these things that have happened recently, the wrong people were called. People with guns that have bad training. I'm sorry, I can't talk anymore.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. They asked if you would put something in the chat. Check the chat. Okay. All right. Thank you. Next, we have Richard.
All right, thank you, Nancy. Yeah, a lot to respond here to. I think getting back to the article, and one of the few things in this article I do agree with, I think directly contradicts what a lot of the participants here are saying, and that is that as Phyllis, I hope I'm not misquoting you in saying that we as quote white people are all racist. Well, the author of this article, as I said, one of the few things I go along with him is he says, well, he acknowledges that on average, he would say that a 25% average is that people that he considers racist. He said it could be 20%, 35%, 50%. He doesn't know, maybe more in the South, but he's giving it 25%. So he has a lot wrong in this article for the reasons I talked about earlier. But if it's 25% as he's presuming, that means that 3 out of 4 quote white people are not quote racist. And I think we are going down a really endless rabbit hole when we're caught up in who is racist and who is not. And I have a right to say you are racist because when we're caught up in referring to ourselves as white and black, that gets us into these confrontational ways of talking about each other. Every situation that is mentioned in his article, if we refer to each other as human beings, if a African-American drives through a dangerous neighborhood and locks his locks, does that make him a racist? These are the situations that we need to think about. These are human beings reacting in situations that other human beings, that they feel threatened in, not necessarily because they are lighter skinned or darker skinned, not necessarily. Yes, there are definitely actions, physical actions, fatal actions that can be proven as racist, and they're proven in court. Basically, they're proven in court as hate crimes. But
okay, Harvey, you want to finish up and to wrap up?
Qualify as racist. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have Bill, Amal, and then Pedro.
Several things. I would agree with Phyllis that we, as white people, we have to deal with racism. Whether we're racist depends on the definition. But I know that I've been held up at knife point by a couple of black kids. And so if I'm in a situation where I think I might be in danger, I have to consciously deal with that and decide how to respond to it. And I generally, the back of my mind idea pops up, oh, this could be a dangerous situation. But 99% of the time, I put that aside and just deal with the person. I give the person the benefit of the doubt. But that thought does cross my mind. I wanted to say one other thing. And this I think is a great example of dog whistles. And this was about against brown people. But there was a show called The Office where Steve Terrell plays this really horrible boss. And he asked someone, what is a polite word for Mexican? Think about that. And I think that really says a lot. And finally, the Bay Area, the example that I gave of the white woman with a black boyfriend who had a bomb go through a roof, that was in the Bay Area. Kamala Harris has said she doesn't know a black man growing up in Oakland who hasn't had a negative interaction with the police. So anyway, enough said.
All right, thank you, Bill. Have Amal and then Pedro. Anyone else? Okay, Amal.
Yeah. Wow. So Richard had gave the 25% as the if you read further in the article, he'll say 25% nationwide average. You say, but clearly that's a guess. He was playing a guessing game. And so, we could guess that may be more, or we could guess that may be less. But nevertheless, you're guessing. He's guessing. So that was the guessing game that he was playing. But Phyllis said something very interesting when she said that she believed that all white people are racist. I'll take it a step further and say that I believe that everyone in the United States, if you're born and raised in the United States, and when I say everyone, I mean everyone, are white supremacists. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that everyone born and raised in the United States at some point in time in their mind have harbored white supremacist thoughts and ideas, even non-white people. And I'll hit that point home by going back to the article, and it was an example that he gave in the article with it was two doctors, and the one had graduated from an average university, and the other one graduated from Yale. I think Yale was it was either Yale or Harvard that he was the example that he used in the article. And he said that the one that graduated from Yale and Harvard was a black doctor. And the other one who graduated he still graduated from a university, but it wasn't Yale or Harvard. And that guy was white. And when it came time to pick a doctor from a white person, he said that most white people would pick the white doctor, even though he with less experience, even though he graduated from an average university than the black doctor who has more experience that graduated from Yale or Harvard. And the truth behind that is that there are black people who would do the same thing. They will gravitate towards a white doctor, white lawyer, so on and so forth, before they gravitate towards someone who was black, because historically, we've always believed that the white man's ice is colder and that his sugar is sweeter. And in believing that, what does that mean? That means that anything that a white man is doing, even if a black man is doing that same thing equally or at a better rate, is better simply because he or she is white. So we all harbored white supremacist ideas. And if you're born and raised in the United States, even to the standards of, whether that be standards of beauty, whether that be standards in education, however far you want to go with it, we've all harbored those thoughts at some point in time in our lives.
Okay, thank you, Amal. Pedro.
Sorry, I had muted myself. So yeah, I mean, a number of things. First, I want to go back to what Bill said. I thought he said it very well, that what makes us all racist in this culture, I think, is not a choice that we make. It's something that's imposed on us in some form or fashion. So when Bill said, when he's pulled over or when I am pulled over by a cop, my thinking is, will I be eligible for defensive driving course? Will I be late for a commitment I may be driving to? If I was black, I might instead be terrified, and rightfully so. So those are things that go on. When you live in a profoundly a culture like ours that is so wealth unequal, and it's got this long history, past and current, riddled with racism. We're all affected by it, consciously or unconsciously. It's almost like a public relations influence on us that can occur at an unconscious level. So I do believe that we are all racist in that we are beneficiaries of an unearned privilege of being white, of not having to worry about that type of terror that others might rightfully feel. That I come back, and I've repeated it before, but this Arlene Geronimus, Dr. Geronimus, talked about weathering, how chronic stress prematurely ages your body, and how being black or being a female or whether it's gender or race inequality or material hardship that comes with that, with poverty at times, that it adds corrosive, chronic stress fueled accelerated aging. That is something that that I don't get based on my white privilege. So until that society has changed, racism will be almost impenetrable. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. Okay, it's 11:10 and there's no one else on the list. So I think we're going to go into the, Lynn, you want to be? Okay, fine, go ahead.
I saw Chris Rock on the television one day after the Obama election, and he was just smiling so broadly and looking so happy. And he said, I used to walk down the street and see white people and think, that guy's a racist. I know he would do me harm if he could. That guy's bad. That guy's a racist. And then after the election of Obama, he said, I'm walking down the street and I'm saying, that guy probably voted for Obama. That woman maybe voted for Obama. We won. These people are not hating me so much. And I just want to say that we all have racist components that have been overlaid onto our beings because we live in this society, but also there are a lot of people of goodwill, and I hope that we will see that in each other too, no matter what the color. Our Black friends see that in us, and we see that in our Black friends, are in everyone. Not to say that racism isn't a terrible problem, but also reach out to the goodness in each other.
Thank you, Lynn. I appreciate that. Okay, now we will move on to the wrap up. And there are a lot of people that have not spoken and get their 2 minutes. So I will let them go first. I'll start with Marva.
I apologize. I needed to take pain medicine for my arthritis before the meeting start. So I've been quiet. I noticed a lot of discussion came up about the service men and women. I did not know about the Tuskegee Airmen until I was in my late 40s and early 50s. And movies came out about the servicemen and how they turned the war around by saving many white airmen in their fleets. And I looked up the first pilot of color. And it wasn't to 1963, the Supreme Court decision to dismantle racial discrimination in the commercial airlines. And that's when they had David Harris was the first airline pilot of color for American Airlines. You think that the history related airline experience they had in the service, they would not be denied up until 1963, holding a position of commercial airline pilots. And that was a terrible oversight that they were not given credit for their service. Thank you.
Thank you, Marva. Next, Cindy. Unmute. There you go.
I found reading this initially, I kept saying, yep, 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 over and over. This is the way it is. But I think in reality, I grew up in the South, 50 years now in New Orleans. New Orleans is a little isolated bubble. Yes, there's racism here, there's poverty and a lot of bad things, but there also is a genuine connection across the negatives toward positive interactions. I think all of us are a product of our upbringing. Now, I grew up in the Carolinas, went north to college in the 60s, so that was kind of a radical time, and then ended up in New Orleans. The contact has always been relatively easy across races, maybe a little bit less so with the poorest of the poor, with foreign people. For me, I realized I know nothing about the whole idea of transgender. I've not encountered that personally. I haven't dealt with it. I don't really quite understand how and why that happens. But I'm certainly not going to be discriminatory, just not so comfortable. I think our actions, what we do with our lives, define who we are much more than money or background status, etc. So for me, I look at 48 years of teaching mostly in the public schools. Certainly there were some racist teachers and administrators, as well as parents and children. But for the most part, the contact promotes, I think, understanding. If you go into it with a positive attitude, I also taught little ones, so that made it a lot easier. I didn't have to deal with middle school kids, not so much. I think we need to just accept that we're a product of many, many interactions and try to build what we value in our own actions.
Okay.
Hopefully toward a better world.
Thank you, Cindy. Okay. As we move on now, everyone else has had a turn to speak. So if you could keep your final thoughts to a minute, be greatly appreciated. Okay, Bill.
I think Amal said something very profound, and that many of us are, almost everyone, it's hard to imagine someone not, growing up in America has an unconscious bias, at least unconscious bias towards white supremacy. And I find in some situations that still persists, and I consciously overcome it. I also have a conscious bias towards African Americans in many roles. An African American doctor had to work a hell of a lot harder than a white guy to get that job. So I would pick the African American doctor consciously. African American airline pilot had to work a lot harder. So I would pick that guy. And I find over time, the unconscious white bias is slowly fading, but it's still there. I have to admit it. And the more conscious black bias is there too. I mean, in favor of it.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Marion?
I thought it was so ironic. We were talking about this today. Yesterday, Craig Melvin on NBC asked President Biden yesterday in a conversation, do you think America is racist? And President Biden answered, yes, in some cases. And then he launched into the conversation about how 400 years in this country for 400 years, there were enslaved people, blah, 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 blah. So right off the bat, the president said yes. He believed America is racist, but it isn't everybody. But generally speaking, America is a racist society. So I'm kind of inclined to agree with him. And very quickly, I had a conversation with a relative, and he was saying that most of the problems of the world are caused by white people. And he went on to name European countries like France, Germany, Spain, and the people in the country are basically what you consider of the Caucasian persuasion. And they have gone all over the world and colonized, it dominated people of color, England especially. And you would be kind of inclined, and I'm saying you generally speaking, to believe that white people dominate the world, and they don't do it in a kind and passion and compassionate way. They cause wars. Okay, I'll be quiet.
No, your minute is up.
Okay, yeah.
Thank
That's why
you.
I'll be quiet.
Thank you. Okay, Lynn?
Two observations. When I'm watching the news, PBS, for example, or NBC with Lester Holt, I'm struck quite often by their conscious effort to bring experts in who might be Black or Hispanic. We see economists, medical officials, and others, and I think they're doing a really big service to the country to show that there are experts, and it doesn't depend on their color. And the news broadcasters, it doesn't depend on their color. Their analysis is excellent. And I'm hoping that the government for the next 4 years will repair some of the economic inequality that Pedro has so brilliantly explained to us every week, with free preschool for everyone, free community college for everyone. And I think there's broadband for everyone and housing for everyone. And I think that will do a lot to alleviate some of the structural racism. And with that alleviation, some of the psychological racism, I hope, will be ameliorated. I hope there's hope for us in our country to make a better world.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Becky?
Yes, Lynn, I agree with that too. And and we seem to be less involved in advocacy and more involved in sort of personal reflection, and both are essential. But it would be good for those of you who can to write your legislator in support of Biden's bill. And so, because it is unique for childcare, it's unique. We've never done that before. So if you think it's right, let them know, please. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Becky. All right, Pedro.
Yeah, man, what a interesting discussion tonight. I just wanted to share an interview I had some years ago with a Tuskegee Airman because it came up earlier. And I think he lived in, is it Opelousas, Louisiana? Is there a town? Anyhow, he his name was Chenier, was his last name, and he recently died about a year ago or so. But he talked about being a Tuskegee Airman, and that in Germany they found out that that the German prisoners were getting better food than the black airmen, and he just that experience, you know, in World War II or whatever. Excuse me, that phone just went off. Has always stayed with me about the you know, the same war still being fought today and such. But anyhow, sorry for that disjointed deal that I got interrupted by a phone call. But anyhow, thank you for the discussion tonight and the article that in your presentation tonight, Nancy. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheryl.
I see Cynthia's comment about other like-minded people. I want to thank everybody for being so nice last week and letting my friends that were visiting me come and visit with us. It led to wonderful conversations. They went off on their own, and just before they left, they said, well, we're leaving now, but we're going to stop at Whitney Plantation. And I said, I'm so happy that you would choose that on your own without my influence. And they really learned a lot, and they really felt like being with all of you was really good for them because they do live in a white enclave. I'm going to bring this up again. I would love to talk about the Claiborne Bridge changes in New Orleans. That would be so interesting to me. Now that Joe Biden has said that he also supports taking it down, and the Treme has turned into a tourist area instead of what it was once before. And I could say so much more, but have a good week, everybody, and happy May Day. Here's to all the workers and all the flowers.
All right, thank you, Cheryl. Richard.
Yes, as usual, a very good discussion, and thanks for bringing this article to our attention, Nancy. As I've said before, I disagree with almost all of it because it's too often based on misperceptions that are just that. They're misperceptions between human beings, and the color enters into the issue in the forms of discrimination, bigotry, injustice. It sometimes rises to the level of racism. But I think part of the problem is that as long as we are obsessed with talking about, quote, white and black, which are social constructs that if you really get granular, don't mean very much, that we're going to be going in circles about who is really racist, who really isn't. Marion, you said, Joe Biden said in response that, yes, there is some racism. There is evidence of racism in the country. And it seemed at the end you implied that he said there was, that it was predominant. So I need to go back and hear what he really said about that. But until we can get into talking about human beings, reacting to human beings, and definitely acknowledging biases, as Amal has talked about, that we've got to get past talking about color. Yes, it matters, but if we're going to progress that others have said, we've got to start thinking of each other as human beings. Thank you.
All right, Richard, thank you. Amal. Amal, you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Yeah, great article. Like one of the best I've seen in a while. One of the things that we have that I think is interesting is that I'm always curious about the type of conversations that white people have with each other when black people are not around, when they're talking about black people. And until we know what that is and how white people check each other when things are said that are out of pocket, we're gonna keep on having these type of conversations and problems. What is it that white people talk about black people when black people are not around? And are there checks and balances that take place in those conversations? And until I hear and know what that is and what those checks and balances are, we're gonna be talking in circles about this for a very long time. White people need to start checking white people. That's the bottom line. And until that happens, don't wait till I jump on the band. Don't wait till I check them and then jump on the bandwagon. You check them before I check them, and then we can move forward.
Okay, thank you, Amal. Marla?
Yeah, that's challenging to follow. I mean, I will take heed 100%, Amal. And, if it means an end of a relationship, that's what it means. So I think this is a great conversation today. I just am going back briefly on what Bill said about white folks having conscious Black bias. I think that would be a really interesting discussion for the future. My interest is in how that's perceived by people of color. Is it pandering? Is that received in a positive way, or is that something that is seen as more performative? I don't know. I think we could have some interesting conversations about that too. But thanks, Nancy, for a great article and great conversation.
Thank you, Marla. Louise.
Great question, Amal. And I'd like to think, just on a personal level, my conversations with other white people are similar to what we have here in this group. And especially recently, in the past few years, I hope to, or I like to think that because I've never been scared of saying what I think, that I do jump in if someone's saying something that I think is racist, out of order, or otherwise. And back to Phyllis, I totally agree. Yes, all white people are racist. And I think it's something another definition of it, Richard, is that we benefit from white supremacy and from our system. Just from benefiting from it makes us racist. And there are there's things that she commented on, that she said, yes, you close your door, you do this, you look, there are certain things that we do subconsciously perhaps, but we do them, and we do need to be aware of that. So yes, we are all racist.
Okay, thank you, Louise. Phyllis.
Wow, this was a interesting conversation. I wish we could have gotten more into the nitty gritty of the article. In some ways we did. I found some videos on TikTok that this woman talks about micro affirmations, and if I can find a way to share them to the Erace Facebook, I will, so you can go there and look for that. But it's like the opposite of microaggressions, like ways to be affirming of people of color, Black people, whatever, in whatever situations you have control over. And Cheryl, could you type that book into the chat so we can all see it? Thanks. Yeah, I just want to say it. I get Erace. We have a culture of safety, but all of us have at least our first names and some of us our last names out there, and it kind of rubs me the wrong way that somebody is not using their real first name, and it seems like one should examine the reasons for that. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Phyllis. Glenn?
Yeah, I believe that goodness is on the rise. And it's like It's like a flower that's opening. You're standing on top of it, you don't actually see it opening. It's in such small increments. Yeah, there's more good going on in the world than there is evil going on in the world. And there's more change in racism. Racism is being defeated. Y'all think that thing on the Capitol was bad. That was good for racism. That was good for destroying racism. Was seen same way it was for the Civil Rights Bill to pass when the dogs and the hose pipe was on camera. And George Floyd, all this is destroying racism. And I think some of us, all right.
Continue. Okay.
All right, well, okay, I'm gonna wrap it up. And I think that some of us, we want to see big leaps happening at one time. This problem occurred over thousands of years, and in America over about 400 years. So it's going to take time to bring it back to order.
Okay, thank you. All right. We're over, it's 11:35, so I'm gonna try to be really quick with my comments. First, I want to say I have no interest, I'm not anti-police. I do not wish to defund the police at all. Okay, however, I have had two kind of traumatic experiences with the police that might not have ended well had things gone a different way. One, I could have ended up in jail. The other one, the guy pulled his gun on me because I had to get my purse out of the trunk. What if his trigger finger was happy and I ended up getting shot? So yes, I do have, yes, am I next? I've been in two situations where it may not have gone well. Okay, so yes, I do think like that. Okay. I do have PTSD from my encounters with the police. And I'm sure a lot of other Black people do too. Okay, so that's one thing. The next thing, I crossed out the wrong thing. We did a race meeting, it's been years ago. It was a video that Bill Connect showed called What Do You Say to a Racist? Okay. And it was the first time people sat around and talked about Thanksgiving dinner. That was the conversation that stuck out most in my mind was it was Bonnie Noonan, I think, if y'all remember Bonnie Noonan. And she talked about her family at the Thanksgiving table and what they said about Black people. That was my first introduction to what white people say amongst themselves is far worse than anything that they will ever say to your face. Okay, I left that meeting. That was another kind of PTSD moment for me. Okay, to have that realization. Okay, so whatever white people may say to me, like the man that was outside of what is a casino over here, Boomtown, and called a bunch of us the N-word. And if he had the nerve enough to call us the N-word, you can imagine what he says about Black people when he's not around Black people. Okay, so after that, that was my indoctrination, and I understand that is not good. The next thing I wanted to talk cultural appropriate. Why I got cultural appropriation on here. Oh, Amal's and white supremacy, and that we all think the white man's ice is colder. Okay, recently on WWL, because I listen every day, there was a discussion about Justin Bieber's dreadlocks. I'm like, leave the man alone. He won't wear dreadlocks. Leave him alone. Let him wear his dreadlocks. Why you got bugging the dog him out about his dreadlocks? Who cares? How long have Black people been treating their hair so that they can look white and be more acceptable? And doing all kinds of things so that you can be more acceptable to white people. What is culture? I mean, that's not cultural appropriation. Leave the man alone about his dreadlocks, okay? So everybody does cultural appropriation at some point. Pick your cultural appropriations that you want to use. I got another one here. Okay, discrimination, particularly where it concerns the military. Yes, when the Black soldiers came back from World War II and had to face Jim Crow exactly as it was when they left, they came back and they said, no more. I didn't go out here and fight and almost lose my life to come back here and have to continue to sit in the back of the bus. And and they couldn't get loans. I think that probably was the biggest thing, the loans for the VA. And that's what started the civil rights movement as you know it, or beginning in the 50s as you see it moving forward. It started in the 50s, but it started with servicemen coming back home from World War II and saying, no, we're not dealing with this again. And my uncle, who just passed away January 5th, was in D-Day. And you never hear about the Black soldiers that participated in D-Day. And on the 75th anniversary, when His Orange Highness was over there celebrating and acknowledging all the veterans that were still alive from D-Day, you didn't see one Black face, not one in the crowd. How disrespectful is that to a group and demeaning to a group of people who have served their country? And my uncle, he talked about going to see Saving Private Ryan, which is the most realistic depiction of the invasion of Omaha Beach. And he talked about going to see it and how traumatic it was for him, that it was so loud. That was the thing that he remembered about it, that it was so loud. All the ships, the machines, the guns, the bombs going off and everything. And this man was not invited to participate in the 75th anniversary in the invasion of Normandy. So racism, whether you care to admit it, still exists. Okay, and then the last thing that I want to say is that yes, I do believe the majority of people are good. The majority of people on this earth are good. The majority of people in the world are good. Or we wouldn't get to where we are now if we didn't have good people. Everybody, there's good people. But there are also not so good people, all right? And they, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. The ones who are not so good are the ones that are making the loudest noise. The people who are going about doing what they do and kind of keeping their head down, trying not to get hit by the bombs of society, whatever, the social issues and whatnot, you don't hear from them so much. So that's why we tend to think of, that there's so much bad in the world. No, I think the world is majority good. You just hear about the bad things that happen in society more than you hear about the good things that happen in society. And I really do believe that. So I guess do we have any announcements?